and welcome to the next segment of the Cavalcade of Authors Reader Appreciation Weekend. We thank everyone for coming tonight, and I want to make sure that I pronounce her name correctly, but first and foremost, hold on, let me show you a little bit what we have here. That's one of her books, Hidden Things, and we have, okay, Elizabeth Schechter.
Exactly right.
Look at that. All right.
It is a very difficult name. It's Yiddish.
Oh.
The Schechter it's an occupation name. The Schechter is the kosher butcher.
Oh.
So, it's a very important person in a Jewish village. But yeah, it's got that German pronunciation, and a lot of people just no. I've had a lot of people nope out. It's like they look at it and go, I'm not even gonna try that. So hi, Miss Liz.
Hey, I got that in.
You did it awesome. That was great.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So I'm going to turn it over to your host for tonight, which is Anita L. Roseboro, who is the author of Show Me No Mercy, Summer Breeze, and Night of Grand Crossing. And we have another tribe member that just hopped in with us. And she doesn't have her, let's see here. She doesn't have it turned on. Can you hear us, Florenza? Nope. So let's do that right there. All right. So anyway, so you guys, I'm going to mute.
Carry on. Hi, Elizabeth.
Hi, Anita. Hi. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. So Elizabeth Schechter has been called one of the top erotica and alternative sexuality writers in the world. So your writing credits include award-winning steampunk erotic romance, House of Sable Locks,
yes,
the Celtic fantasy Princess of Air, and the ongoing Heir to the Firstborn serial, your first foray into new adult fantasy.
Yes.
All right. I also understand that you said that you were going to read something for us today.
I do have a selection from Hidden Things, if we have the time to do it. If we don't, then I'm just happy to go on with an Ask Me Anything. So
okay,
I am very flexible.
Okay, so I do have a couple questions for you.
Sure.
My first question: what is alternative sexuality?
Alternative sexuality. This is not something that I tagged myself with. It was somebody actually described me as, that entire, leading erotic romance and alternative sexuality. And I read that 3 or 4 times and wondered which Elizabeth Schechter they were actually talking about, because they couldn't possibly be talking about me. But alternative sexualities, I write a lot of queer characters. People in my books should be assumed to be bisexual unless I state otherwise.
Okay.
I have written bisexual, I've written pansexual, I've written homosexual, I've written asexual characters. I'm writing one right now in the Heir to the Firstborn series. One of my main characters is asexual. And I have written transgender characters, which was terrifying the first time I did it, because I have to do it right. If I don't do it right, I'm not doing it. So I representation is important. You will find yourself in my books. So that's when they describe me as writing alternative sexualities, everything, the entire sexuality spectrum will show up somewhere in my books.
Anita, can you hear me? Okay, looks like her screen froze.
I think your video froze.
No, your video froze. Yes. We're just fine.
Okay, you're back.
How, isn't that just like a human? No, it's your issue, not my issue. And we're like, honey, no, it's 2 against 1. It's your issue. Thank you very much.
We had having Zoom's giving yesterday. My video broke up 2 or 3 times, but I'm plugged into the cable this time. So
yes. So we're good.
All right.
Google is not your friend when you are searching for alternative sexuality. I just want to throw that out there.
Oh dear.
So
Yeah, that would make for some interesting search results. That would, yeah. I'm very
yes,
fond of saying
very.
that because I write alternative sexuality, because I write all over the spectrum of, gender and sexual identities, and because I write kinky, my search history on my Google search history would make my mother come back from the dead to smack me.
Oh wow. So is that considered part of the erotic genre?
Which alternative sexuality?
Yes.
Uh, it is if I do explicit sex on the page. I made my name writing explicit erotic romance and erotica. The new adult without sex on the page, it's all fade to black. That's new, but I've been writing erotic romance and explicit sex for almost 10 years now.
Okay.
And right, alternative sexuality itself, it does not necessarily mean it's going to be erotic. Erotic means there's just going to be more sex on the page.
Got you. So, if a person has not read any of your stories, what book would you recommend that they start with?
It would depend on whether or not they wanted explicit sex on the page. If they wanted explicit sex and a standalone story, then I would definitely point them at House of Sable Locks, which is my the award winner. It's the one I'm very proud of it. It was my second book, and I'm always trying to hit that point because my second book being the best book I've ever written was a little daunting. um it's BDSM, steampunk, erotic romance, and it's the favorite of my children. I'll just be right out there. If you don't want sex on the page, then the Heir to the Firstborn series, which starts with Written in Water, is my new adult series, and that one, I'm really pleased with how that one's turning out. And it started as stunt writing. I started writing a serial on Patreon and putting up one chapter a week every week, and it was my patrons see the story in process. They get the rough draft. So
Okay.
I'm writing it real time. Every chapter goes up as I finish it. And then when I have enough for a book, I put it, I have it edited and I put it together, and then it's published as a book. So, and my patrons get a copy of the book. So they see the raw form and then they see what it looks like when it's published. It's my How the Sausage Gets Made project.
That's awesome.
And
Awesome.
it's been going on for 2.5 years. I'm wrapping up book 4 in the series now, and there's one more to go.
Oh, wow. So, what's it like writing series for you?
I didn't think I could. When I first started, I thought I did not have the attention span to write a series. I was writing one-offs. I wrote Princes of Air. I wrote House of Sable Locks. I wrote Heart's Master. I wrote all of these standalone books. And then I wrote the book that was published as Counsel of the Wicked. When I originally wrote it, the title was The School. And I sent it into the publisher because I was totally, I was with a small publisher at that point. Now I'm hybrid, but back then I just went through publishers. But I sent that book in, and they bought it, and going through the edits and finished the book, handed in the final copy, and the publisher said, "And where's the next one?"
Oh, wow.
And I went, "What?" "Well, the story's not done. There's questions that aren't answered here. Where's the next book?" So I'm like, all right. So I wrote a synopsis for the next 2 books in this trilogy and sold them on spec, which was the first time I'd ever done that. And I committed trilogy for the first time ever. And by the time I was done with the 3rd book, I was convinced I had written complete and utter trash. I was ready to throw it out the window. And my editor talked me down. And it's a very dark series. It's out of print right now because that publisher's gone out of business. But I'm going to be republishing that. I'm going to be self-publishing that one sometime next year.
Okay.
Because I got all the rights back to it, and they were very good to me about that. But it was a dark fantasy, dark dystopian fantasy with an asexual character, and that's where my first transgender character showed up in that series. It's not for the faint of heart. When I go dark, I go all in dark. And I have people who have read the first book and will not read the next two because they're like, no, Liz, what are you doing? No. Like, no, you were warned. This is dark, but I didn't think you meant that dark.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
But yeah, so now it's like, I know I can do it. I can carry off a series. I can carry off, I can do the world building to put together what's now going to be a 5-book series. It was originally supposed to be 4, but there's too much in book 4. It would be like this. So
Okay.
yeah. I'm almost done with it, and it's approaching 150,000 words.
Wow.
Yeah, that's not
Huge.
yeah, that's pushing it on one book. And it's not even anywhere near where it needs to be to wrap up the series. So it's like, yeah, we're getting book 5. Really.
So I noticed you had like a lot of that you've held many occupations.
Oh my God, yes.
How many of the occupations that you've held go with your characters in your book?
Oh my goodness. Well, the list of occupations runs pretty much the gamut. I was a teacher. I was a fitness instructor, which is fun for messing with people's head because I'm a plus-size woman. And when I would introduce myself to people and say, yes, I'm a fitness instructor, they would do this. Really?
Sure. I'm sure.
I worked in a bakery. I worked in I did all kinds of retail. I did data entry. I did everything. And sometimes these will show up in my books. Sometimes they will show up as, okay, a character will have something that I do or have done as a hobby. I just handed a book into one of my publishers where where the main character is a yoga instructor, which I don't teach. I've never taught yoga, but I do a lot of yoga. So it's like, okay, I have some idea of what's going on here, and I know where to look to find the rest. So, and I know who to talk to find the rest.
Right.
A lot of times knowing things that I do about different positions and different jobs will get me in trouble when I'm reading other people's works, because it's like, that's not how that works. I know, I've done it.
That could come in handy, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I saw you were a daycare teacher.
I
was it kindergarten?
I taught kindergarten. I taught 4th grade. I taught high school. I taught AP English in a high school in Harlem, which was the best time I ever had with those kids. They were great. I'm trying to think where I think those are the only ones. Yeah, those are the only grades that I taught. I taught kindergarten, I taught 4th grade, and the high school kids. I am by training a high school English teacher.
Okay. I could
but when
see that.
But when I graduated from college, I was in New York. I graduated from City University of New York, and that was the year they laid off more teachers than they hired. So there was nothing. There were no jobs outside of like a private school, and I taught at a private school for a year, and then I moved to Maryland with my fiance, and that's when I taught 4th grade. And then I moved to another private school, taught 4th grade, and burned out on teaching entirely at that point, because I wanted to teach kids. I didn't want to do politics, and there's a lot of politics in school. And I did not play politics really well when I was much younger. I didn't have the patience for it. I just wanted to teach.
Yeah, I think my son has that same problem. He teaches school now, and he's kind of burnout right now too. And he's
Burn
only 21.
Oh, burnout, especially in young teachers, especially in first year teachers, the burnout is intense because they don't warn you about it when you're in your educational classes.
Right.
They teach you they don't teach you about the administrative side. And they don't teach you about the hoops you have to jump through. They teach you about classroom management, and they teach you about how to do evaluations, and they teach you about portfolios, and they teach you all this good stuff. And then you
Right.
get into the schools and you find out that a lot of times the schools have thrown all of that out the window.
True.
And it's my first ever publishing my first ever publishing credential I was a research assistant on a longitudinal study on stress burnout in first year teachers.
Wow.
My college advisor wrote this study, and I helped him with, the analysis of the data and everything. So he put me on there as a co-author, which was very nice of him. And he didn't have to do that, but because I was basically just a number herder and data entry. So that was my first ever publishing credit, was on this. So I kind of had the firsthand view of how many teachers burn out early.
Yeah. So what was your hardest book to write? Oh, I think, do you want to read so we don't run out of time? No.
Florenza has had a question.
Oh,
Has a
okay.
question that she wants to
Sorry.
ask.
Sure.
Sorry.
Yes. Hey, Liz.
Hey.
This is fascinating, but I do have a question.
Sure.
So, what inspired you to go so dark?
What inspired me to go so dark in Counsel of the Wicked? You know how especially with computer programming, your output comes from your input. And
Yes.
a lot of times with writing, your output comes from your input. I blame my sister getting the flu for that entire series, because she got the flu in December, about 8 years ago. So I flew to North Carolina from Florida to take care of her daughters while she was in the hospital because she had it that bad. Which in December means I was driving her daughters to church 6 times in one day, to and from church 3 times on a Sunday, for mass, for rehearsal for the Christmas pageant, and for my older niece for her classes that she needed for her confirmation. Which means 6 times going past the Stonewall Jackson School for Boys.
Okay.
Which is a ruin just outside Charlotte. And it was a penitentiary school.
Oh.
And I never knew what it was, but all you could see from the road was this big octagonal, like a gazebo.
Mm-hmm.
And the last time we drove past, it was this foggy, rainy evening, December evening in North Carolina. And there's this gazebo, and it is this presence. And you know how places will occasionally in your books become characters?
Right.
That became the school. And that became what in the books is the well house. Got back to the house, not done running around. I look up this school and I look up the stories behind this school. And at the same time, they were looking into the boys' school in the Panhandle here in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And they were starting to find the bodies of all of these boys who had disappeared while they were incarcerated at this school.
Mm-hmm.
So these two, the stories about the Stonewall Jackson School and the stories about this school in the Panhandle, where
We froze.
Now that time is her.
because they were considered delinquents, and then they were never. That's me. Did
Yep.
I freeze?
Yes,
Well,
Yes.
you know what?
did.
That's how dark you were. You were so dark it froze.
Oh no, I scared the computer. I scared the internet. Oh no. Where did I freeze?
Panhandle met
Yeah, the stories that were coming out of the Panhandle met the stories about that school in North Carolina, and that just kind of bubbled up into this dark undercurrent of this dystopian school where the ruling class of this very puritanical dystopian culture were using the people, using the boys who were imprisoned at this school to raise magic to keep everybody else pacified.
Oh.
And because they're using blood magic and because they're using this dark, tainted stuff, the entire story has that thread of real dark nastiness into it. And the main character walks willingly into hell. I'm not going to spoil anything, but he walks willingly into hell. He knows what he's going into to save the man he loves and everybody he considers a family.
Mm.
And the one scene, that scene where he walks into hell, I tried to gloss. I was going to gloss over that scene and do fade to black and come back to the reaction. And my editor says, if you're going to write the scene, Liz,
Write scene.
the damn scene. It is the most powerful, disturbing thing I've ever written. And when I got the rights back, I considered cutting that scene for when I republish it. And I sat down and reread the book and went, I can't neuter this book like that. It needs that darkness in order to show later on in the series how far he's come. Because the next two books, this main character, his name is Matthias, the next two books are him dealing with the choices that he's made and what has been done to him.
Mm. And on that, and just, I know it's for time, how did that affect you, your whole being, tapping into such a dark space? And the reason why I asked, when Patricia Cornwell did her version of Jack the Ripper, she ended up being institutionalized as a result of it. She couldn't take it. Yeah. And so I've heard of other writers who really tap into such it doesn't necessarily have to be that dark of it, but whatever is that place that they tap into, that their physical being, mentally, physically, emotionally, can't pivot back, can't find its balance. What did you do? How were you able to find that balance for yourself?
Oh my, that I haven't given it really any thought. Sometimes I will channel writing. Sometimes writing will be very cathartic for me because I will channel what's going on around me into the page. So if on a lot of levels, if something's really, really hit me, and if there's a really, really powerful scene in one of my books, you will, if you look at what was going on in my life at that point, there was something that really kind of pushed that particular button. I'm not sure what it was that was pushing that particular button 8 years ago. There were no, actually, now I'm thinking about it. What was, it was something entirely different, but it had nothing to do with, there was some negativity going on, and I'm not going to go into specifics because it involves my son. But this was me channeling a lot of rage.
Okay. So that's what made you be able to stay balanced.
Yeah, a lot of times when something negative, really, really negative shows up in my book, I'm channeling something. And there was enough anger and enough stress going on that year I also triggered a shingles flare, first time ever. So yeah. Apparently I didn't channel enough onto the page.
Thank you.
No, you're welcome. That was a fantastic question. I love that question. It made me think.
Thanks, Flo. Okay, so we got to wrap up.
Oh,
So
that was so
would you?
quick.
It was. It
Yes.
was.
So do you want to tell everybody where they can find you?
Well, I will put this in the chat too. My website is elizabethschechterwrites.com. And because my last name is difficult to spell, I will definitely put it in the chat. I am on Facebook. I am on Twitter as EA Schechter. I'm very active on Twitter. I do a daily tarot draw on Twitter, which can be scarily accurate sometimes, and people will yell at me because it's like, Liz, what are you doing? Stop that. I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, I'm everywhere. But if you go to my website, there are links to all of my social media on there. And I am on Patreon. And the book that's on the graphic here, Hidden Things, that's coming out in January. So I'm doing some promos and things for that. And let me think, what else? Where am I? Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, yeah, I do have a Pinterest. I forget about it all the time. Patreon. So yeah, I have a newsletter. It's still new.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I've only just put out my third newsletter. It's actually all Sierra London's fault because
And they can
she
subscribe
did
to
something
that.
at nationals about doing a newsletter, and it's all her fault.
Okay.
And on my website, you can also sign up for my newsletter.
Right. It's a pleasure talking to you.
Oh, it was so much fun to
getting
talk to you
know
guys.
about your work.
Well, thank you for having me. And Sierra's just going, that's very funny. Well, it's true, Sierra. It's all your fault.
Indeed.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for
Lisa.
having me. Sierra, thank you for asking me. This was a lot of fun. All right, I will get my website up in here into the chat.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. And